Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer citizen board appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the City Council. Our procedure this evening is as follows. First, we will hear from the Planning and Development Services Unit, represented tonight by Mr. John Barrett. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will make his or her presentation. Petitioners will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. The board members may ask questions of either the city or the petitioner. We will acknowledge any written comments received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. The board will discuss the appeal and formulate a resolution to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be required for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Go through roll call. I am here. Mike Daniel.
Here.
Dave DeVarty.
Here.
Mike Dobmeyer. Nicole Eisenman.
Here.
Todd Grant.
Here.
Heather Lewis.
Here.
Julie Weatherby.
Here.
Kirk Westfall.
Here.
We have a quorum. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? From Heather, to support. From Mike, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have minutes from the September 27th meeting. Are there any comments on those minutes? Any corrections? If not, do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Motion from Kirk, support. From Mike, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving into hearings and appeals, we have ZBA 17028, 1810 Abbott Avenue. John?
I'm John Barrett, zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. The first case this evening is ZBA case 17-028, 1810 Abbott Avenue is the address. Scott Pecor and Kyla Boyce, property owners, are requesting a variance from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:57, averaging an existing front setback line. Applicants are seeking to construct a front porch that will be 20 feet 6 inches wide by 7 feet 4 inches deep. The existing average front setback is 23 feet, and the proposed porch will be 19 feet 8 inches from the front setback. Therefore, a 3-foot 4-inch variance is being requested from the average front setback. The property is zoned R1D, single-family residential, and is located south of Jackson Avenue and east of Glendale Drive. The residence was built in 1947 and is approximately 1,500 square feet in size. The new porch will be approximately 150 square feet in size and will be consistent with the architectural style and materials of the home. If you'll turn your attention to the monitors, please. The first slide is the location. You see the highlighted parcel. It's just south of Jackson Road and east of Glendale. The next slide is the aerial of the neighborhood, of the surrounding properties, and you see the subject property. Next slide is a zoom-in aerial photo, and the applicants are proposing to build a front porch right in front of the existing subject property of the home. You see the relationship of the adjacent properties as well. Next slide is the site plan that was submitted with the application. And you see the highlighted area where the proposed porch is going to be. This is a enlarged area of the porch. Like I said, it's going to be 7 feet 4 inches deep and 20 feet 6 inches wide. An elevation front of the porch of the home. And this is the side elevation of the porch, how it'll extend off the existing roof line, and it's going to be an open air porch. That's the side elevation. These are the photos that I took when I was on the site. See the subject property. This is looking east at the adjacent property. You see the vegetative barrier between the two properties. This is looking west towards the other side of the property, the other neighbors. This is the area where the porch will extend off of the front of the house. And this is looking directly across the street. Another view of the neighborhood. My back is to the subject property. That concludes staff's presentation. I'll take any questions at this time.
Thanks, John. Any questions for staff?
Yes, sir.
When I was there earlier today, I noticed throughout the neighborhood a lot of covered, what I would call stoops, not necessarily large enough to put chairs on. If it's covered, does that make it a porch?
Once it exceeds 20 square feet.
So something that's
Five.
5 by 5 would be a porch.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. If the petitioner's here, if you could please step forward, sign in, and state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Scott Pecor. Appeal number, sorry. What's the appeal number?
17028.
So as John said, we'd like to build a porch. I think the feeling that we're going for in our porch came up with us about a year ago when we were walking further towards town where a lot more people have porches. And friends of ours were out on the porch. We said hello. They invited us on the porch and we spent the evening with them. That's the kind of feeling we're looking for. Where we are up in our area, I think we're pretty close with our neighbors. A lot of the interactions take place because none of us have garages. And so that's when we're in front of the house when we park in the street. And we'd like to increase that interaction. That's basically why we'd like to build a porch. Why do we want to build a porch? Now, we've lived here for 24 years. We've raised our kids there. We're looking at what we're going to do next in our lives, and we think we'd like to stay. And many of our neighbors are saying the same thing, which makes us happy. So we're kind of thinking about, and we're going to stay, and that's where this porch idea kind of, we've thought about it for a while, and that's where it's coming from. As far as the size of the porch, we went down to the houses that have porches where there's chairs and people can kind of sit around it, and we kind of sized it out. We are, as you can see from our house, not big house people. Our daughters share a room. We like to live small. We don't want a big porch. We looked for a porch size that was kind of minimum for the use that we want, which is basically, like I said, we're sitting out front, two people stop by, we can sit around, play cards, or invite them to eat. So I think that kind of gets at the size of the porch and gets at why we want a porch.
Thank you.
Thank
Are there
you.
any questions for the petitioner? No? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this petition? Seeing none, we're in discussion. Dave?
Well, I want to speak to this. People here know how I feel about porches, that I think they're a real asset to the neighborhood and to the community. I have some close friends on Virginia, which is right around the corner in Virginia, which isn't that close to downtown. It's just right around the corner from you. There's tons of porches, just much bigger than what you're proposing. As I noted there, a lot of the people have covered stoops which extend, and they may even qualify as porches if 20 feet is a porch, over 20 feet. Probably a lot of these people already have some porches that extend into setbacks, which may be why the averaging is working against you. Both houses on both sides of you are much bigger houses, taller and larger houses, and I think you have a very modest footprint here, and what you're asking for is a very modest sized porch. And when I put a porch several years ago on my home and had to come here to the ZBA years before I was on the ZBA, my architect told me, just keep it small, be minimal. You don't want to do more than you have to accomplish your needs. I feel like you're doing this. I feel like the petitioner is doing all of those things, keeping it a minimal footprint. I also note you don't have a covered stoop now, which is a safety issue. And I know your kids are raised, but that was one of the reasons that drove us to put a covered porch. We had an uncovered stoop, and it was a very slippery situation in the wintertime, as I'm guessing you've probably encountered as well. I'm definitely in support of this kind of thing as a real asset to the community, and a very modest request on your part.
Yeah, Todd?
Yes, Candace, piggybacking what Dave said, I'm in favor of this. When I look at the numbers, they're really only asking for a 14% trim back on the setback variance, going from 23 feet to 19 feet 8 inches. It's really just a minimal change. 14.5% is how I crunch the numbers. So it's a very small variance request, and given everything else in the project, I think it seems very reasonable to me.
I will note, we did receive several letters of support from the homeowners at 1806 Abbott Avenue, 1802 Abbott, 1815 Abbott, 1809 Abbott, 1812 Abbott, and 1808 Abbott. So, any other discussion or motion? Yeah.
So my understanding is that the setback that is, that we're evaluating here is created from the averaging of the properties within 100 feet, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that there's one home that's offsetting that setback, or creating that kind of steeper setback requirement, and that this porch addition would actually bring this home more into line with the setbacks of the adjacent properties. With that being said, this does seem like a peculiar situation to this property, and I'd be in support of this porch addition.
Kirk?
I should have asked this during the staff Q&A. Can I revert to staff for a second? So does this, could you remind us about what happens when we do grant? Does this become a new front setback effectively, or is it just for this? Or how does that play out in the future?
It's gonna, well, it's gonna be for the submitted plans for this property. And then it'll create a setback at 19 feet, 8 inches for this property.
And it's per submitted plan, so in the future, way in the future, if there was a new owner, addition,
30 years,
closing.
30 years down the road, then they would have a 19-foot, 8-inch variance, or setback.
So it's per submitted, so it runs with,
It runs with the land.
understood.
Yep.
And I would concur about the peculiarity. Aside from it being an asset, I agree with everything that's been said, and you really have a block full of supportive neighbors, so congratulations on that. It doesn't always happen that way. Yeah, it seems like these kinds of things should be like the Olympics. They throw out the high score and low score and then take the average of the rest, because it does seem like a unique situation. So I'd be in support.
Any other discussion or motion?
I'll make the motion.
Dave?
Petition ZBA 17-028, 1810 Abbott Avenue. A variance based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variances from Chapter 55, Section 5:57, averaging an existing front setback line to allow a variance of 3 feet 4 inches in order to construct a 150 square foot front porch. The average front setback is 23 feet, and the new setback will be 19 feet 8 inches. The front porch is to be built per the submitted plans. A, the alleged practical difficulties are peculiar to the property and result from the conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. B, that the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience, inability to attain a higher financial return, or both. C, the variance, if granted, will not significantly affect surrounding properties. D, the circumstances of the variance request are not self-imposed. E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the land or structure.
Support from Kirk. Nicole?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Kirk?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Mike Daniel?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Your request is approved. Moving on to petition ZBA 17-029-332 East William Street. John?
The next case before us this evening is ZBA case 17-029. The address is 332 East William Street. Gallatin Manor LLC, represented by Jeffrey R. Gallatin, is requesting an alteration to a nonconforming structure in order to construct 2 new apartments. Each unit will contain 2 bedrooms and will be built in the basement. The basement currently contains 2 storage units, and those will be converted into the apartments. Applicant seeks permission from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:87(1), subsections 1A. The subject parcel is Zone D2, Downtown District, and is located near the intersection of East William Street and South Division Street. The property is non-conforming because of the floor area ratio, or otherwise known as FAR. The D2 district has a 200% FAR, and the subject parcel contains 13,852 square feet. This would allow for a 27,704 square foot structure, and the apartment building currently contains 29,768 square feet. The building is currently 2,064 square feet over the maximum allowable FAR, thus requiring approval to alter a non-conforming structure if any new improvements are proposed. The site currently meets and exceeds the parking requirements. If you'll turn your attention to the slides. The first slide is the location map. The subject property is highlighted. You see it's right here, just west of Division, right along East William. You see the neighborhood and surrounding uses, the aerial map. Next slide is a zoomed in of the aerial, and you see the parking lot is back here in the rear of the property. Next slide is a site plan of the lower level basement portion of the building. The 2 new apartments proposed are right here and right here in the shaded areas, both comprising 2-bedroom apartments. The first slide is a floor plan of one of the proposed apartments. You see the bedroom 1 and 2, living, dining room area, bath, kitchen, and a connecting hallway between the 2 sides of the living unit. This will be in the basement, again, as I said. Next floor plan is a proposed apartment number 2. You see the 2 bedrooms, living, kitchen, bath. This is the elevations of the existing building. There will be some new windows installed, and I will state that the applicant did go to the HDC because it's in the historic district, and our HDC has approved the exterior alterations as well. This is the survey that was submitted with the application. These are more floor plans that were submitted with the application. These are the existing storage units, lockers, that will be converted into apartments. These are photos that were submitted by the applicant showing existing conditions. And here's the photos that I took the day I was out at the site and met the applicant. Subject property. This is looking down the west side of the property. This is looking down the east side of the property. This is the rear of the building, standing at the parking lot at the very back of the property. This is parking conditions and a building within the interior of the parking lot. This is down in the basement, showing existing storage units that'll be converted into the apartment living area. This is a property next door, directly next door to the west. This is the property right next door to the east. Properties, multifamily across the street, and more across the street. That concludes staff's presentation. I'll take any questions at this time.
Thanks, John. Any questions for staff? Dave?
The application says it meets or exceeds the parking. I also walked there. There's only 5 or 6 parking spaces for 38 units or 40 units. What is the parking requirement?
The property is zoned D2, so in the downtown district, there are no parking requirements. However, you're required 1 parking space for every 1,000 square feet that you go over the allowable FAR. So they're 2,000 square feet over the FAR, so they'd be required 2 spaces, and I think he has between 6 and 8 back there. So he does exceed the existing parking requirements.
I think there's only 6. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, the petitioner's here. If you could please step forward, state your name for the record, and sign in.
I'm sorry, what was the last part you said?
Sign in.
Oh, yes. Appeal number. To ZBA, CBA, 17. Yes, sorry, a little slow.
No worries.
Okay. My turn to go? Okay. First of all, I'd say, good evening, Ms. Chairperson, and fellow members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is, even though I put it down here, my name is Jeffrey R. Gallatin. My address is 409 South Division, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48104. My cell number, so I have the record, is 734-368-0256. I'm the owner of what I call Gallatin Manor LLC, also known as, a lot of people know as the Washington. Normally, I would try and make this presentation verbally off the top of my head, but because of my age, I'm more comfortable reading and ad-libbing it, and I hope you'll be patient with me. When I was younger, I did it all off my head because I came to the zoning board a lot of times and housing board and whatnot. I'm not as good at that anymore, so it takes longer, so it's easier to read it, so I apologize. The reason I'm here is to ask your permission to grant, or ask for permission to grant, start that again. The reason I'm here is to ask you to grant me permission to alter a non-conforming structure so I can complete the remodeling of my apartment building, both inside and outside, which I've been working on for approximately 40 years. Let me begin with some history. I purchased the building from Drennan, a real estate appraiser, who was the second owner of the building and who owned it for approximately 40 years. He purchased it from a doctor who built the building and owned it for approximately 10 years. So I'm the third owner of the building. It was originally designed as a 40-unit apartment building, but the doctor only finished 36 units. Then, many years later, in 1964, 2 more units were completed, making it 38 units. I purchased the building approximately 40 years ago, not because of its an investment potential, but because I'm from New York, and the building reminded me of New York. So it makes me feel like I'm home, because I grew up and lived in these kinds of buildings throughout my life. I'm a realtor, builder, mechanical contractor, state licensed appraiser, property manager, and mortgage broker. I've been helping people buy, sell, remodel, and develop property for 43 years. I enjoy purchasing older buildings with character and style and remodeling them back to what they used to be, then selling them to people who appreciate them for what they are and keeping the best for my portfolio. I've spent a lot of time and money remodeling 332 East William. It's been long and slow because it's expensive, but it's not about the money, or I wouldn't be doing it. If you think I'm doing it for money, you're not thinking it through, for it will cost me about $120,000, which will take me 4 to 6 years to recover, and I'm 73 years old, which means I'll be somewhere around 80 years old by the time I recover back the $120,000, assuming I'm alive and assuming I'm operating with a full deck. There is something more important than money, and each and every one of you are living proof, because you come here once a month, plus a few times a month, and if my memory is correct, you don't get paid. Then why do I want to add the 2 units? Because of a few reasons. One, the building was designed as a 40-unit building. I have wanted to complete the building, the remaining 2 units, for 40 years. But the city has had the strict philosophy of low density, so it has not allowed any new multiple-family construction, except for 1 building in the last 40 years. But when the economy fell apart in 2006 and 2008, and property was devalued by 33 to 50%, the city lost a huge portion of its income. Suddenly, they revisited high density and said, it's not so bad. Hence, all the new cement high-rise skyscrapers popped up. So now, I'd like to complete my project and would appreciate your granting me permission. 2, the city needs more housing in the downtown and central campus area for seniors so they can walk, shop, and socialize with students, working people, businesses, and take advantage of utilizing the University of Michigan and all it has to offer. For working people who want to live downtown and walk to work, and for students who want to live the life of a student and be able to walk and bicycle to class. People like living in older homes and period buildings rather than modern cement concrete towers. They like a small, warm neighborhood type city where you can walk down the block or into a store and someone knows you or recognizes you. We need to try and hold on to our historic structures with all these historic districts. 3, what I've been doing at 332 East William for the last 40 years is developing a sense of community within the building by renting to senior citizens who are 65 to 92 years old, working people 30 to 50 years old, and senior undergrads and grad students going to med school, the business school, the law school, and working on their PhD. The question is, what is the character of the neighborhood? Which is what I do as a state licensed appraiser. So I asked myself, what type of neighborhood is this? Is it a single family owner occupied, rental, meaning apartments, commercial, meaning stores, industrial, meaning factories? And I think the answer is clear, that it is a rental neighborhood, predominantly students, with a little commercial office, and by adding 2 units, so the building will be 4 units instead of 38, it will, 1, will it change the tone of the neighboring property or the neighborhood? And my answer to that is no. I can't see how it would. Number two, change the property values. No. As a state licensed appraiser, again, I'd say no, and a realtor. Will it have any effect on the neighboring properties or neighborhood? Again, no. There is at least a couple of thousand rental units in the neighborhood, and the city is constantly adding more and more rental units by encouraging the cement tower skyscrapers with two more to be built, to be added within 2 blocks of my building. Where the YMCA was, they're going to be building, I've heard all kinds of stories about it, so I'm not sure, but it's going to be a big building.
Mr. Gallatin?
Yep.
You've done an excellent job of stating your case so far, but if we can wrap it up in about 1 more minute, please.
Could you give me 2? All right, I'll do it, just cut.
We're
me
over
off.
our time, but
Yeah.
that's fine, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. This, over, the other building is over the parking lot called Liberty Plaza, or Library Plaza, I'm sorry. There is not, this is not all bad because most students, working people, and seniors cannot afford a condo for $150,000 to $650,000, which is basically the range. Remembering my building is not a makeover or a cut-up single family trying to be stretched into being something it wasn't intended to be. It was the economy and the city's strict low density that prevented it from being completed as designed. 2 units over 500 would mean we're increasing it by .004. 2 units over 1,000 units would be .002. The large apartment buildings in the area, as you know, are Zircon, corner of William and Thompson, Maynard House at the corner of William and Maynard, the 4-story brick apartment building at the corner of William and Division, the 2-story apartment complex on 5th between Jefferson and William, the two 12-plus story buildings on Washington and Division, the double building, 12-plus stories on Huron and Division, the 12-plus story building being built on Huron between Division and State. The space I'm utilizing was a game room, a workout, an exercise area, a playroom, and most recently storage lockers, which Gallatin Enterprises used 14 of them. Tenants used 17 of them. Now they're using 7 of them. So what I'm going to do is, if it's granted, I'm going to displace the 7 into other parts of the building. I am not asking for an addition. I'm not asking for an accessory unit, so I can convert a garage. I've been a realtor for 43 years and spent most of my life trying to protect property rights, neighborhoods, communities, towns, and cities. The Zoning Board of Appeals seems to feel converting of attics is an acceptable alteration. You had 2BA 16-012 approved 5516, 808 Ann Street, John Keller, requesting to finish a 450-square-foot attic. 2B 17005 approved 32217, 333 East Jefferson, John Bradley Moore and Associates, permission to finish an attic adding 935 square feet, and finished a basement in additional floor space. You have 2BA 16016 approved 7/27/16, Ollie, and I won't say it right, so I'll spell it, Oybeki, and Hanen, I think it is, Realty LLC, finished a basement into additional floor space. Perhaps because the space is pre-existing, which could imply the same thing for my pre-existing lower level, especially since I already have 5 units in the lower level, which was originally designed for 7. I have a page summary, if I can read it. If not, I'll stop. I'm not trying to...
We usually grant people 3 minutes, and we've gone
Okay.
at least 10,
No,
so...
then I'll be quiet. That's all I can do. I apologize. I just, I know
Oh,
what I
you-
want to do. and
You
I
did a
wanna
fine
be
job, sir.
fair. So I'll...
Any questions for the petitioner? Okay. Oh, did you, okay, thank you.
Sorry again that it took so long. I was trying. But believe me, if I did it off the top of my head, it would have probably been worse. So I apologize.
Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak on this petition? I'll note we have one letter of objection from the tenant who currently lives at 332 East William Street, and has since 2012. All right, we're in discussion. Mike?
Yeah, this one for me, I know this neighborhood well. I lived about a half block away for 2 years in college. Obviously the letter from the tenant who's been there since 2012 doesn't make me feel good inside to read some of the points on that letter, but I'm not here to decide how you treat your tenants, or if you make comments that are uncomfortable, that's not really in front of us. So what this is proposing to do, I don't have a problem with it. It's not expanding the footprint. It's not really changing how the building looks. It's adding more units to an area that I think need more units, and will encourage, hopefully 4 more people to live downtown and walk places and ride their bike places. And so for me, I'm going to vote yes on it because of those factors.
Todd?
I agree with Mike. I note in the staff presentation that the exterior changes will be minimal, that the applicant has already passed review by the Historic Commission. There's obviously no effect on the neighborhood and is providing more housing. So I'm in favor of it.
Kurt?
If I could ask a question of staff again, please. So HDC, I'm assuming, evaluates just the modification that's happening. It does not provide sort of a look at the exterior in terms of
The only
overall
changes
compliance.
were some windows, and so it was approved.
Okay.
There will be no footprint changes, there won't be any additions. It's the same footprint. Everything's basically within the interior of the building.
And it appears. Mhm.
And all the changes about the windows were consistent with the existing. They're going to be as close as they can be to the existing materials. So,
And I guess in the packet, there's been claims about upgrades or renovations. I guess just as a layperson, not an architect, I guess the front elevation, it would escape me. What has improved there? Are there any current code issues or anything going on with the building, and would that need to be remedied before?
none that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
We're in closed session.
Yeah, maybe after. Yeah, thank you.
Any other? Dave?
I'm with Mike on this, that I see it as not really making any changes on the floor plan. It is adding some units. I am troubled by the lack of requirement for additional parking, but that's the fault of the existing D2 zoning code, and I think that we already have a parking shortage. And when I was back there today, all the half a dozen parking spaces were full except one. So I know that there's a need for those. The one thing I would ask the petitioner to think about, because there are a lot of bikes in front, you have 2 bike hoops on the public right-of-way, and there were a couple bikes also attached to meters, or not the meters, but the numbered things. And you have a whole bunch of bikes, I think there were 7 of them, attached to the poles that support the roof, so right there in the entry. And you've got those shrubs there. It strikes me that maybe a little bit of the shrubbery could be removed to create some parking for the tenants, since you don't have a ton of parking there for 40 units. To have some bike parking that's out of the public right-of-way, I think would be that's not part of my vote. My vote is because I'll vote for it, but I would ask you, as a member of the community and thinking about your tenants, and most of them are using bikes, clearly there's a demand for additional bike parking there at that building site, and you have a 40-unit building, so, and without a lot of parking in back. So that's something I would just say as a statement to encourage the petitioner to do something, but I will vote for this.
Any further discussion or motion?
This is regarding petition ZBA 17-029, 332 East William Street. Permission to alter a non-conforming structure. Based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants permission to alter a non-conforming structure per submitted plans. A, the alteration complies as nearly as practicable with the requirements of the zoning chapter and will not have a detrimental effect on neighboring property.
I have a motion, do we have support? Support from Nicole. Mike Daniel.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Kirk.
Yes.
I also vote yes, the request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA.
Just
Uh,
afterwards.
Yeah, at the,
Okay. Sure.
petition ZBA 17-030, 1500 Chandler Road. John?
This is ZBA case 17-030. The address is 1500 Chandler Road. Jennifer Chapman and Matthew Solomon, property owners, are requesting a variance from Chapter 55 zoning, Section 5:28, area, height, and placement regulations. The owners are proposing to construct a 28-foot wide by 26-foot, 8-inch deep addition to the north side of the residence. The rear yard requirement is 30 feet, and the variance request is 19 feet 6 inches. The result will be a 10-foot, 6-inch rear yard setback. The addition will contain a handicap-accessible bedroom and bathroom. The subject property is a corner lot, and the addition will be located in the rear yard, which serves as the side yard of the property. The property is zoned R1C, Siegel Family Residential, and is located on a corner lot that fronts Chandler Road and Argo Drive, and is located across from Beckley Park. If you'll follow along on the monitors, the first slide shows the location map. The subject property is highlighted. You see it's at the corner of Argo and Chandler, directly across from the park that I mentioned, just east of the river. Next slide, is the aerial of the property and surrounding neighborhood and existing conditions. And the next slide is the zoomed-in aerial photo. And you see on the north side of the property, in this area right here, is where the proposed addition will be. Once again, it's on a corner lot, so on a corner lot, you have two front setbacks along Chandler and Argo. This is the side, and then this serves as the rear. So that would be the 30-foot setback required and the variance needed on this side. The next slide is the floor plan that was submitted with the application. The addition proposed would be on this side right here in this area. You see a master bedroom, closet, and a bath connected to the existing home. Next slide shows elevations. This is the front elevation, and this is where the proposed addition will be. And you see the connection between the existing home and the addition. Next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. Here are photos that were submitted with the application from the applicants. And these are the photos that I took when I was at the property. You see the subject property as it exists right now. This is looking to the left at the neighboring property, and this is the area on the north side where the proposed addition would be. This is the rear yard where the proposed addition is going to be connected into the existing house. This is looking down Argo Drive, adjacent property. This is looking directly across the street from the property, that my back is to the property. And that's looking at the corner of Argo and Chandler across at the park. I will take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff? Okay, if the petitioner's here, if you could please step forward, state your name for the record and sign in. You'll have 5 minutes.
so much for reviewing our application. We come to you tonight seeking a variance as a last resort in what has turned out to be a very long and difficult process of getting our family into a suitable home. I will keep my remarks brief, as John has done a nice job of presenting our proposal, and I believe our application largely explains our situation. My husband, Matthew, and our architect, Ed Weir, are both here as well if you have questions for either of them. About 5 years ago, Matthew was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which unfortunately is a progressive neurological disorder. This, along with several other chronic diseases from which he suffers, has and will continue to have a tremendous effect on his health and mobility. Last year, we decided to sell our 1920s arts and crafts home on the west side because the steep stairs had become too dangerous, and there was no way to add a downstairs bedroom and bathroom. We had no idea at the time how difficult it would be to find a house that better suited our needs. We all know the challenges of trying to buy a house in Ann Arbor. If you add additional constraints, such as needing a one-story house, it becomes nearly impossible. We tried and failed to buy multiple other homes before we were able to win the bidding war on this one. Every single one of those other houses required significant modification in order to be handicapped accessible. If the perfect house for a family in our situation exists in Ann Arbor, despite near obsessive looking and the help of at least 4 realtors, we did not find it. What we did find was a house that met a lot of our needs regarding location. In addition to Matthew's office at U of M, we have a son at Community, we have a daughter who goes to Ann Arbor STEAM, and then our youngest is at the co-op preschool downtown. The house was within our budget, and it is a single-story home. The modifications we are proposing will improve our property for our family as well as for anyone who might live there in the future. They will allow our family to grow and be productive members of our community with the knowledge that we will not have to move again if and when Matthew's needs change. To me, this variance is about accessibility and how we want to shape the future of our communities. It is not particular to our family's hardship, as it reflects a greater need in Ann Arbor for more accessible one-story houses in which people with disabilities, as well as older people with limited mobility, can age in place. Every realtor we spoke with told us that there is a great need for such homes in our community. We have worked very hard to design an addition which will have minimal impact on our immediate neighbors, and I am so grateful that we have their full support, along with the support of every other neighbor I have spoken to, some of whom have elected to send letters on our behalf. We already feel welcomed by our new community and cannot wait to move into our house. Again, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Nicole?
I'm curious, I know this is a steeply sloped site. I'm curious if you're planning any sort of accessibility upgrades to that site.
Our plan at this time is to use Argo because the approach to our house from Argo was actually level, so we plan to have a walkway that leads from the front door across, so it's more level.
Dave?
I was there earlier today, and I noticed a building permit in the window that was authorized for a second story. What's happening with that?
We're obviously not putting on the second story. We originally spent, when we learned about the setback issues, spent some very expensive months pursuing the option of putting on a second story and just having our children's bedrooms up there. And then realized that that was the wrong choice for our family, given that that's why we moved in the first place. So we decided to apply for a variance. We were trying to avoid doing that and realized that that would really be the only choice for our family.
The reason I ask is we have we have 2 letters from one woman who's your neighbor. The first one was supportive without any question, and the second one is worried about the imposition of a monster house towering over her house. And so I'm starting to ask myself, is this an addition to that's going to be I mean, is this going to be one of these McMansions, and you're taking the space there? So that's the kind of question I was asking myself. So what would your, I guess, whether we grant the variance or not, either way, you could build a second story. If we don't grant it, you can build the second story. You've already got a building permit for that. If we do grant it, you could build the second story on all or part of the new footprint that we've allowed with the granting of a variance.
Right.
So that's something that I'll have to think very deeply about before I make my decision on this.
Can I ask who I guess I can't.
I mean, that's
Sorry.
public record, isn't
It
it?
is.
I'm actually surprised, because we've had a lot of communication with our neighbors. They've
Well,
been very supportive.
They may have felt like it was going to be a two-story thing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why, but
Yeah,
we do have, it is public record. All the communications that we receive are public record.
right, okay.
And you are welcome to, rather than me telling her his or her name,
Sure, that's
to our TV audience, if you want to ask our staff, I'm sure that they'll provide it. If they don't provide it, I would hope that they would just provide it, but if they don't, you could always get it from Freedom of Information Act requests.
thank you.
And it should be part of our published minutes anyway.
Yeah.
All written communications are going to be part of our published minutes.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Sorry, could I add something here? Is that possible?
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to say that.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
And then give us your name as well, for the public record.
Hi, my name is Matthew Solomon, co-petitioner. I just want to take some responsibility for the indecision which appears before you, which is, I think, due to my inability to acknowledge what was going on in my situation. So Jennifer has been extremely supportive in trying to accommodate my new normal. I have been less quick to acknowledge that. So the change of direction that the questioner speaks of is explicable not to some ulterior motive or master plan for McMansiondom, which I can really assure you is not our aim, but is my responsibility as someone who is only lately acknowledging the issues before him. So I ask you to just take that into consideration. Excuse me.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you. If there's anyone else here who wishes to speak on this petition? Ask that you please sign in and state your name for the record as well.
Hello, my name is Andrew Picnic. I live at 711 Argo Drive. It's one house separates me and 1500 Chandler. So unfortunately, you guys did not speak to me, and I do have a lot of concerns with granting the variance. So I struggle to see how it could be granted, because it seems like all the requirements are unmet and somewhat boldly so. I'll be quick because you guys already have this in your notes. On point A, almost every neighborhood block has 4 such corner properties. It's only exceptional, this particular property is only exceptional in how unexceptional it is. It is a straightforward rectangular lot. The setback requirements are very easy to calculate. It's not triangular. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I was definitely, I'll get to this, but as a participant in the bidding for the house, I was well aware of the setback requirements. Jennifer and Matthew, they haven't moved in. You know that they have the second story permit, and they continue to make progress on it. I won't go into that. It seems pretty obvious from that that this might be an unfortunate mistake. So on point C, I will be impacted by this, and I'm actually a little bit even more scared that they were going to have it seemed like a heightened northern tip that would even further block my western view out of my backyard. I do value that, and I have proof of that by not putting in an 8-foot fence. I have a 4-foot fence. So my neighbors and everyone else can see through the yards and sort of have that community appeal that we were looking for with the porch that you guys discussed earlier. Obviously, it's obvious that this may not be their intent, but there's definitely a benefit to having a single story and being able to build that wide. And I do think that it's somewhat unfair. And I'm sure there are some things that you're faced with that are pretty unfair as well. That by my bid and what I calculated as what would make sense for me to purchase the property, I just thought it would be a developer or a couple of developers that were going to, build there's a similar house and lot that was expanded in a 2-story and added a basement. And I thought it was just developers who beat me out because I was very interested in the property. I love this area. The location is fantastic. But I'm definitely concerned that there are some financial motives in place with this. So the conditions or circumstances on the variance request is based, shall not be self-imposed. I literally tried to buy the house, so this would not be something that they would have to incur. And I've spent a lot of time looking at houses and with a budget of over $500,000, what I'm guessing, and then also making a move inside Ann Arbor. Seems like I really wish this could have been avoided. And when I mentioned boldly so, this is a 66% reduction in the rear yard requirement. It's not like they're bumping something out for a few feet. This is a very big variance. And I say unfortunately when I open because it's tough to oppose something that any prospective neighbor clearly wants. It's also challenging to balance principles and law at the risk of being insensitive. Nobody wants to do that. This idea of wanting to get off on the right foot, I do think, and I've discussed it with neighbors, is a large part of the lack of opposition. We're definitely counting on the Zoning Board of Appeals to kind of get out of this awkward situation. And I'm confident they're going to love the location, neighborhood, and best on the block park views with a conforming renovation. Hopefully with either some mobility enhancements, mechanical, I don't know. But I don't feel like this is a time to grant a variance when it's going to have a negative impact on me, and it's a huge ask. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak on this petition? Okay, I will note we.
I do have a question. I'd like, sir, can you explain a little bit more your comment in your letter that this will reduce your western line of sight by
Can you pull up
50%? Is that assuming a second story?
No. Well, so right now, I can look out, I can see all the way across Chandler to 1506 Chandler. I think it's 1506. I might be wrong on the address. The opposing street. And you can see a little bit farther, it's actually on top of a hill. There's, as you mentioned, the hill up. So you get a little bit more of a little bit of a broader view back there. And it's really enjoyable. In fact, I just started using the backyard a lot this year and realized how awesome it is.
So, just to be clear, I'm having a little trouble visualizing.
Yeah,
You're
so
content-
if you drew a straight line out of the eastern side of their house, essentially that would create a 12-foot to 15-foot wall through which I could not see, keep that line of sight all the way, that goes all the way to like Pear and Apple, actually.
And this is the one-story.
That would be a
What
one-story. And then if they could do a two-story on top of that, I mean, then it'd be an apartment complex. So,
they're- Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I will note that we have letters of support from the residents at 719 Argo Drive. As noted, we have a letter of opposition from 711 Argo Drive, a letter of support from 1511 Chandler Road. A letter of support from Lori and Paul. It does not have an address. And then there's a letter of support and then a follow-up letter of some concern from 1504 Chandler Road. With that being said, we're in discussion.
I would like to state on the record that I live in this neighborhood. I live on Argo Drive at 711 Argo. With the gentleman who just spoke at this. So I have come to my own conclusions regarding this petition, and I don't have any conflict of interest with being a resident of that home in this petition.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. Any other discussion, questions?
I can say what my conclusions are. So while I support the concept of aging in place, I cannot support this petition. Of the criteria that this board needs to use to evaluate our petitions, I do have concerns about the question of hardship or practical difficulty with this being an exceptional site or peculiar to the property. This corner condition can be found throughout the city in many of these mid-century neighborhoods. As I've been reviewing this application, it actually has occurred to me that these corner lots with limited area to build are really important in these neighborhoods, especially near downtown. Their limited area to build due to these zoning restrictions allows these homes to remain small and affordable entry points to desirable neighborhoods. And the minimum variance necessary to make reasonable use of the land or structure, I don't think this is a minimum variance necessary. The proposed addition is quite large, and looking at the site plan, there is area to expand the home on all sides and stay within the setback limitations. And I do have concerns that if we grant this variance and the petitioner no longer lives in the property, that an additional second story has been discussed amongst the board, or would be a concern.
Any other discussion? Heather?
Could we get clarification on this building permit for 2 stories versus what we're looking at tonight?
The applicants do have a building permit on file, like has been stated. They can build a second story by right. So if you placed a second story on top of the existing footprint, it meets the setbacks. So they would be able to, by right, build a second story. But that's not what's before us. What's before us is the proposed addition to the north.
So the construction has or has not started on the 2-story?
To my belief, it has not started, but that was when I was out there, and it's probably been 3 weeks. I can actually tell you when I was out there on October 1st. So it has been 24 days since I was at the site, and I don't believe construction was taking place when I was there. So, but I was told by the applicants that they have withdrawn those plans to build the second story, so I have to take them at their word. Or, yeah. They've revised the plans and have eliminated the second story in those plans.
Thank
But, anytime in the future, they can do a second story by right, or the next owners, whoever. That- So,
So if we were to approve this variance, any subsequent owner could build a second story on top of what we're approving tonight?
not, well, yes, on top of what's, the.
If we were to
the-
approve this
correct,
plan,
yep, mhm.
then a second
That's-
story could go on top of that with no problem. Okay.
But that aside, on the existing foundation, they could by right.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll just comment that it appears that a single-car garage is being converted into house, living space. And there is quite a large deck sort of in the middle, as well as quite a large hallway. So it does appear that the addition is larger than the minimum that would be required for a barrier-free bedroom, bathroom, closet, and laundry. Julie?
I think this is, for me, it's a difficult one. I'd like to say, yeah, this sounds great, and I know that I know other people who have expressed the same problems with finding barrier-free and accessible housing. Unfortunately, I think, as other people have said, there are some legal issues and legal wording that we have to go by, and I am having a hard time seeing some of those. It does look like there is sort of extra space. The hallway, it looks like maybe the deck is to preserve a tree that's existing. It seems like, and I realize you want a nice house too, I mean, not just, but it does seem like there maybe would be room to do this in an existing, within the existing setback, and it makes it difficult for us to even legally sort of say, yes, this is okay, as much as I might personally want to do that. I'm having a hard time finding the sort of, if it weren't you, if it weren't for this circumstance, if it weren't for, would I be feeling the same way? And I think it's a little difficult in this case. I don't know that I can approve this unless I hear somebody else say a really good reason that I should. It feels legally like this doesn't fit in with what we have to use.
Todd?
Yes, I agree with Julie. I think we all have feelings for people with difficult health situations, but what we're doing today is addressing something that doesn't apply to the person, but runs with the land, that is, ties to the property. And I don't think this meets the 5 criteria. I think it meets several of them, in my opinion, but it doesn't meet 3 of them. I can be particular if you want, but it only needs to fail one of them, and then the answer has to be no. Even though I personally feel for the applicants, they seem like very decent folks in a different situation. I think, given the legal requirements that we need to look at, I think I have to vote no on this.
Dave?
As people on the board know, I usually jump in and speak right off the bat. This is one I've really agonized over, and I have to generally agree with my fellow board members on the statements, and the reason I held off saying anything is I really wanted to hear input before I said anything to color the discussion. I know you have an excellent architect. I would encourage whatever, and I understand the situation with dealing with a person with disability. And I would encourage you to continue to work with your architect. I know that he has the capability to, within the existing footprint and certainly with the second floor, address the needs of your family. And I know you can build the second floor within this footprint. So I'm going to have to also vote no on this.
Any further discussion or motion? Heather?
I guess I'll just add the one that strikes me as the E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the land. Just speaking for myself, I could understand granting a smaller variance to permit a one-story berry-free home, but this is quite a large variance, and it's not the minimum necessary.
Kirk?
I think I am pretty much in line with what's been said already. Again, trying to apply the pretty strict criteria we have about using the appeal process for truly, extraordinary property-specific circumstances. I know there's really severe market circumstances in the city and a dearth of accessible single-family housing for sure. And unfortunately, I'm struggling to find a way to make this proposal fit the criteria that we've been given. So unfortunately, I have to vote no.
Ready for a motion?
I'll make it.
Okay.
Based on the following findings of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the zoning board of appeals hereby grants the following variances from chapter 55, section 528, area height and placement regulations to allow a variance of 19 feet 6 inches in order to construct a 26-foot wide by 28 inch deep addition to the north side of the residence. The rear yard requirement is 30 feet. The result will be a 10-foot 6-inch rear yard. The addition is to be built per the submitted plans. A, the alleged practical difficulties are peculiar to the property and result from conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. B, that the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than mere inconvenience, inability to attain a higher financial return, or both. C, the variance, if granted, will not significantly affect surrounding properties. D, the circumstances of the variance request are not self-imposed. E, the variance request is the minimum necessary to achieve reasonable use of the land or structure.
I have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Kirk? Todd?
No.
Heather?
No.
Julie?
No.
Kirk?
No.
I also vote no. Mike Daniel?
No.
Dave?
No.
The request is denied. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole. I skipped you.
No.
The request is denied. We have dealt with all of our public hearings and new business. We've addressed reports and communications. Is there anyone else here from the public who wishes to speak? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? From Kirk, support? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.